Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our local Hamilton County Tennessee Achieves and Tennessee Promise update. I am Graham Thomas, one of our deputy directors here at Tennessee Achieves, and so appreciative that you are able to join us today while we run through some of our local numbers. Tell you real quick kind of what we're going to do today. Well, maybe a housekeeping thing real quick. So you will notice that your cameras and microphones are turned off. Expecting a pretty good group today. So wanted to ensure that we had proper sound and video quality. So still certainly want to make sure that if you have any questions, comments, or feedback that we get to those. So you can please utilize the chat box or the Q&A box. Want to make sure we answer any questions or any concerns that you may have before we get going today. So you can type those as we're going. I'll try to get to them if I can, but may save some till the end. But I promise any questions you have, we'll get them taken care of. So the goal of today is when we created Tennessee Promise back in 2014 and it was passed by the General Assembly, it was written that each county mayor or county executive appointed a group that we call Local Advisory Council to really do a couple of things. First, help us navigate the community, specifically in the mentoring program, help us find those active pockets of people to support students in the counties that we serve. And then second, to provide an additional layer of accountability so that we can report back to you our successes, our progress, and our struggles. You're going to see all of those today. We have some successes to celebrate. We've been making some good progress, and you're going to see a slide or two in here that is honestly, we could be doing better. So that is our goal for today. We decided this year that as we continue to navigate a pandemic, the best way to do that would be to go virtual. And we figured if we're going to go virtual, we'll just invite all of our stakeholders. So to our advisory council members, see Mike St. Charles is on here, Dr. Ashford is on here. Sorry if I missed any. I was watching the names pop up as I was getting this started. We also invited everyone that serves as a mentor. We have great business partnerships at Blue Cross Blue Shield and Unum locally. So all of those folks have been invited, and we hope that you find this useful. So a real quick reminder, who are we at Tennessee Achieves? We are the 501c3 nonprofit that serves as the partnering organization for Tennessee Promise in 90 of our state's 95 counties. We launched in 2008 in Knoxville, and since then we have worked with more than 440,000 students and 71,000 volunteer mentors, working annually with more than 600 Tennessee high schools and 67 eligible post-secondary institutions. This next slide here shows what we call the core components of Tennessee Achieves. So the first three have been with us really since this program was just an idea on the whiteboard in Mayor Ragsdale's office in Knox County. Tennessee Promise now providing that last dollar scholarship for any Tennessee high school senior to attend one of our 13 community colleges, our 27 colleges of applied technology, and then also 27 four-year universities that offer associate degrees. Each student in the 90 counties where we operate is paired with a volunteer mentor that checks in, provides guidance. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. And then our students give back 8 hours of community service every single semester. Those three pieces of this, like I said, have been with us since 2008. Since then, we have launched a few additional initiatives. First is our summer programming. We now offer 2 different summer programs, the first of which is the Summer Bridge program that we offer at all 13 community colleges. It is a 3-week program designed to prepare students that are not testing into college level courses in either math, reading, or writing. Some require all 3, some require 2, some just need 1. The opportunity to test into college level courses at the end. So they come every day for 3 hours for 3 weeks. They do an hour of reading, hour of writing, hour of math, and then they post-test. Really exciting to announce this year that we had an 89% success rate in that program. We know in a year where students were in and out of the classroom, we've seen that test scores were down pretty dramatically across the state. We've heard a lot about learning loss. That's a really big win for those students. Second program that we operate is called the Summer Institute. It is pretty much the Summer Bridge program on steroids and is currently offered in the urban core of Memphis. It is a 6-week program. It is, instead of 3 hours a day, 7 or 8 hours a day, and it's credit bearing. Students that participate do require all 3 learning support classes. And so what they do is they come in and they participate in TBR's co-requisite model, and they take all 3 reading, writing, and math learning support classes paired with college level courses. The students have the opportunity to knock out all learning support classes and earn 9 hours of college credit. 29 students took us up on it this year in inner city Memphis. So excited to announce we had a 100% success rate. All 29 students completed their remedial coursework, and all 29 students earned 9 hours of college credit. So we are hoping to grow that program across the state. We've tried it in Nashville, we tried it in Knoxville. We haven't had students take us up on it. This year posed some obvious challenges, but we're going to try to grow that outside of Memphis in the coming years. And then finally, we now have a coaching model called Complete. It is for our low-income students across Tennessee. What we have learned in the first 7 years of Tennessee Promise is that even though college is tuition free, our low-income students still do not go to college at rates as high as their peers. And when they go, they don't graduate at rates as high as their peers. So they are now all paired with a what we call Complete coach. Dalton is on this call with me today. He is one of our Complete coaches that essentially picks up the work where their mentors leave off. They're reaching out, getting to know these students and helping coach them through college. This specific population of students is outpacing the general Tennessee Promise population at community colleges. So we've taken our lowest achieving group and we've moved them up to the front. And that's something that we hope to grow as well. We'll talk a little bit more about how we plan to do that in a few minutes. Continuing to talk a little bit about our reach, I mentioned that we're in 90 counties, 74 of which are classified as rural, 35 are classified as either at risk or distressed by the Department of Economic and Community Development, working in 601 high schools. That is every public, private, and homeschool cooperative in those 90 counties. I mentioned that we work in 67 colleges, so 13 community colleges, 27 Tennessee colleges of applied technology, and somehow it works out 27 4-year options. See a breakdown of where it is that our students are attending. Almost 80% of them are at the community college, with a pretty even split there between 11% at the TCAT, 10% at the 4-year university. A little more about the scope of our work, working with more than 60,000 high school seniors every single year. When you couple that with the 30,000 or so college students that we're working with, we work with 90,000 students every single year. 89% of all Tennessee high school seniors come through the Tennessee Achieves program. When you add that to the work that the AIRS Foundation is doing in the 5 counties they serve, well over 90% of students in Tennessee are applying for Tennessee Promise every single year. 89% of which, though, come through our program. 89% of all seniors in Tennessee. That translates at the college level into 78% of all first-time freshmen at the community colleges come through Tennessee Achieves. And here's a number we're really proud of: 86% of all community college graduates are Tennessee Achieves students. For those of us that have been working on this Tennessee Achieves experiment since the early days in 2008, I think I pinch myself some mornings to stop and think about the scale at which we operate. We started with 490 students in Knox County to think that we're now working with 60,000 students every year. It really kind of blows our mind sometimes, but it's also what drives us to wake up every day and think about how we can move the needle for these students. See, Dr. Ashford said we've come a long way. Dr. Ashford, the current president at Chattanooga State, was a vice president at Pellissippi State when we launched this program. So she's been there with us since the 490 original students and has been a great partner with us in this work for the last 13 years. Certainly appreciate her support at 2 colleges now. This next line has some demographic data here. So 56% of our students qualify for federal financial aid. So that means that they are eligible for a Pell Grant, which means they are low income, coming from low income households. This next data point, 40% of our students, they're self-reporting as first generation college students on the FAFSA. I think this number probably skews a little bit low when you consider that only 44% of adults in Tennessee have a post-secondary degree. To think that then only 40% of the next generation is reporting as first generation seems a little low to me. There's also not a really good definition of what it means to be a first generation college student. So I think it's probably a little bit higher, but they're reporting at 40%. And then another data point that we pulled recently that we were really excited to see is that 51% of our students are majoring in either a health science or a STEM related field, 27% of them in a health field. When you're looking at the nursing shortage across Tennessee, it's really promising. The other thing that this data point shows me is that our students are majoring in demand, the most in demand fields in Tennessee, which means when they graduate, they're going to have a credential that is desirable for our employers, which means they shouldn't have a hard time finding a job. So really exciting data point there. And then at the bottom, you see what it costs to operate these two programs each year. $32 million is the annual scholarship cost, comes out to about $1,100 per student. And then tnAchieves, we operate on a $2.5 million annual budget, the vast majority of which is privately funded. Next, we're going to look at some of our statewide demographics next to the Hamilton County. So the first chart you see on the left side of your screen is our ethnicity breakdown. You can see that Hamilton County provides a slightly more diverse population than our statewide data, which is not surprising, having being one of our 4 major metropolitan areas, having an urban core there in Chattanooga, that you have a higher percentage of Black and African American students than we see across the state, which you can see is pretty much pulled from the population of white students across the state. Slightly more diverse population of students in Hamilton County. The EFC number, the estimated family contribution that you see in the top right of your screen, that is an income indicator. So your estimated family contribution is the number that the FAFSA spits out on the end. If you're eligible for a Pell Grant, it means that you are a low income student. If you're not eligible for a Pell Grant, doesn't necessarily mean that you're not what maybe we would all consider a low income student, but financially speaking, you're coming from a family with maybe slightly moderate to significantly more financial means than the students with the Pell Grant. You can see that Hamilton County students fall pretty much right on pace with what we're seeing statewide. And then that first generation number, Hamilton County, slightly less first generation, not super surprising to see in a county when you're looking that a little more affluent county, that students would, fewer of them would be the first in their family to go to college. Next, we have our program benchmarks, and the first one is one that Hamilton County should certainly be celebrating. 91% of all Tennessee Promise applicants in the class of 2021 completed a FAFSA. Statewide, we were at 86. We have seen a dip in this number 2 years ago. Statewide, we were at 90%. When you're looking at the fact that this past year, students were in and out of school, our 2 largest school districts being Nashville and Memphis, high school seniors were not in class in the building during FAFSA filing season. We saw a dip. I mean, I think it's to be expected. It's unfortunate. You might argue that we were fortunate it was only 4%, but we're going to continue to work really hard to make sure we get back up to that 90% range statewide. Hamilton County still coming in over 90% is a number to be very, very proud of, especially for a county your size. It's a really strong indicator there that we are eliminating that federal financial aid paperwork, that we're making it easier for students. And a huge shout out to all of our counselors working in the school that are making sure students are overcoming this barrier. It is certainly a partnership with many different organizations across Tennessee, but a number that you should be proud of locally. The next box shows the community service numbers. We have almost 3.4 million hours completed by Tennessee Promise students across the state. Randy Boyd is our board chairman. He tells people that means that we are the largest community service organization in Tennessee. We don't know that that is true. No one has yet stood up and said that it's not true. So we're going to keep sharing that as if it is true. And if someone tells us otherwise, we'll stop. But you can see more than 112,000 hours have been completed locally in Hamilton County and Chattanooga. Hopefully, Dr. Ashford, you're seeing that on your college campus. You're seeing it in your schools. You're seeing it with your nonprofits. Some of that great work that students are doing for their community. This next slide is arguably our most important slide. you can see the top 3 rows here are from the class of 2019, and then the graduation rate is from the class of 2017. But almost 2,700 students applying for Tennessee Promise in Hamilton County, 827 of which then enrolled eligible for Tennessee Promise with a first-year retention rate. So your first-year retention rate means they started their freshman year, they came back in their sophomore year. 65% of them, compared to 67% statewide. Tick or two below the average, but nothing super concerning there. And then you see our 3-year graduation rate of 30% versus 35% statewide. Certainly a number that we want to dig into in terms of our larger cities across Tennessee, certainly outpacing Nashville and Memphis, I think a little bit behind Knoxville, but not too far off the pace. Certainly a number that we want to continue to dig in on and do everything we can. I'm going to talk about some of the things that we are doing here in just a few minutes to hopefully increase that college going rate. Here are some of our statewide outcomes when we're looking at retention and graduation. You can see that tnAchieves students that go to college eligible for Tennessee Promise have a 67% fall-to-fall retention rate. Again, meaning they started and they came back for their sophomore year. 74% of tnAchieves students that go to college anywhere. So these are your students that apply for Tennessee Promise, end up at UTC or UTK or MTSU or a private university or even out of state, but they were given a mentor. We helped them with their FAFSA. They got all of our reminders. All of these 2 stats versus a 53% first-year retention rate for the general community college population, not the Tennessee Promise, tnAchieves population, the entire population. Good early success indicators there. And then you see the 6-year graduation rate for students that start at the community college. 6 years later, 35% of them have a degree versus students participating in tnAchieves at a 51%. A couple of populations fall into this 51%. These are your students that go to Chattanooga State, earn an associate's degree and go to work, or transfer and maybe earn a bachelor's degree. These are also your students that go to Chattanooga State maybe for a year, knock out those core classes, and then transfer to UTC or UT or wherever it may be, and earn a bachelor's degree within 6 years. When you're looking at 51%, it is a little bit hard to celebrate that number. When we started tnAchieves in 2008, the 3-year community college graduation rate was 14%. It is now 25%. tnAchieves 3-year graduation rate at community college is 31%. So we're moving in the right direction. Here are some things on the right side of the screen that we are doing to impact these outcomes. So I mentioned our summer programs earlier. Not only are they successful in preparing students to go to college, but students that participate in them increase their first-year retention by 34%. So they are becoming more prepared to start college, and then they are retaining at higher levels because they participated in these programs. Our students in our coaching program, the complete coaching program, have increased their first-year retention by 23%. And a program that is brand new to us that we are very excited about, I say brand new, it's been going on for a year or so now, feels brand new, is called Knox Promise. Knox Promise is funded by a private donation from the Haslam family in Knox County that allows us to do 2 things. First, every single Knox County student that goes to college eligible for Tennessee Promise gets a coach. So in the complete program, only the low-income students. In Knox Promise, every student gets a coach to help them as they navigate their college experience. Second thing it allows us to do is we have money to, we have what we call completion grants. These may be more familiar to you as emergency grants, but we are able to, we have an income cap of about, I think, $65,000 or so household income. We are able, for any students that fall below that, we can pay for their books, we can pay for their travel, so gas cards. We have we figured out something with Uber where we can pick them up at their house and only take them to the college campus. We can pay for that. We have students that are food insecure. We can pay for their grocery bills. We had a student in Knoxville whose mom was homeless. She was living at home with her stepdad and 7 or 8 siblings. They couldn't pay their utility bill. We paid that. We had a student in Knoxville that found herself in an abusive relationship, and we paid for her transitional housing. It's a program that we're very excited about. Our legislature, who has been so good to us over the last 7 years and continues to be so supportive of our program, recently has funded a 4-year pilot at $1 million, $250,000 a year. That is allowing us to expand these completion grants across the state. The income cap is going to be lower, just simply not as much money and many more students than the Knox County program. But we sent an email out to every eligible student on Monday morning, letting them know if they qualify for this. We had a student that completed one this week who wrote and said that she doesn't have food to eat, or he or she, I'm not sure, doesn't have food to eat. Quote, their fridge is empty, so we're paying for that. We had a student in the Upper Cumberland that reached out and said that her mom has recently started dating a guy and they have developed an alcohol and drug problem, and she is staying at a friend's house, but she doesn't have the money to go to and from campus every day. So we're going to help that student pay for her transportation. We really think this is the next iteration of our work, that it could be game changing. And we're hoping that we can move the needle a little bit with this program, that we will be able to go back to our legislature, increase that funding. We need about $5 million across the state if we want to give every student a coach and have access to these completion grants. See, Edward asked, what's the difference between a coach and a mentor? So mentors are our volunteers, 9,000 across the state, and I'll talk about those in just a minute, that are working with a small group of students, helping them get into college and through that first semester. Our coaches are full-time staff members. So we've got about 17 or 18 full-time staff members working with students once they're in college, and they stay with them throughout their entire college experience. We have also now, just brand new, I don't even know that we've told anyone this publicly, we have moved 3 of our current coaches into a new role. We're calling them transfer coaches. They're going to help students transfer. We get data from students, says about 85% of our community college students tell us their end goal is to transfer to a 4-year university. Only about 15% of them do. So we now have 3 coaches that are going to work with them, hopefully to increase transfer rates across Tennessee. Next, we have a breakdown of what your student population that is enrolling using Tennessee Promise looks like, again, compared to the state. What you can see here is that there continue to be some real equity gaps across the different ethnicities in Tennessee. Our white students seem to pretty drastically outpace our students of color, specifically when you get to graduation. 20% statewide white students outpacing their Black and African American peers. Locally, that gap is a little bit smaller, only 13% as opposed to 20, but something that we certainly want to continue to dig in on and try our best to close some of these equity gaps statewide. So I'll leave this up here just for a second so you can kind of see, but generally speaking, our white students are outpacing Black, African American, and any of our larger minority populations here. So the data in this presentation, for the most part, is pretty good. And then we get to this slide, and my heart kind of drops every time it pops up on the screen. 2015 was the year that we implemented Tennessee Promise. You can see that we increased the college going rate in Tennessee by 4.6%. Steady increases over the next couple of years. We plateaued a little bit in 18 and 19. Then COVID hit in 2020. And you can see that the gains that we made in 2015, we lost them, completely lost them. 5 percentage point dip in the state's college going rate in 1 year. Locally, Hamilton County did a little bit better, just about a 4%, 3.7, I think is that number, dip in college going rate. So weren't hit as hard as the state was hit, but certainly still going down. What we are hearing for the class of 2021, based on very, very early enrollment numbers, this will change, can change, is that 57% that we were at in 2020 is about where we're going to land again in 2021. Again, students are just now showing up on college campuses this week, so I don't know exactly what that number is going to look like, but early indications are it's going to stay about the same. See that Edward had a question about, do we know where students are going? We do. So, well, we know for students that apply for Tennessee Promise, we know that about a third of the Tennessee Promise applicants go to college using Tennessee Promise. About a third of them go to college outside the scope of Tennessee Promise, four-year universities in state or out of state. And then about a third of them still are not going. Well, that was previous to this 57% college going rate. We'll have to dig in a little bit further to see exactly where they are in 2020, but in the prior years, that's about how it shook out. What can you do to help us with what I would say Dr. Wise, who is Dr. Ashford's peer at Pell City State Community College, president at Pell City State, says, there's no such thing as an educational emergency. This is probably, this college going rate drop that we're seeing due to COVID is probably the closest thing you get to an educational emergency. And we could use your help on a few things. One, we need 9,000 volunteers across the state of Tennessee. Kind of run through those three roles real quick. One, serve as a task manager, keeping students on track, making sure that they're completing those applications, completing their financial aid files, making progress towards college while remaining eligible for the scholarship. Two, you are that trusted resource they can reach out to when they have a question, when they don't know what the next step is, when they get a letter from financial aid and they don't know what it means. And finally, what I have been arguing is the most important role our mentors play over the last 13 years as we continue to navigate fairly uncertain times. Certainly the most important role our mentors play is that encouragement piece. Hey, it's a weird time and it's tough and it's challenging out there right now, but you can do this. I'm going to help you. We're going to go on this journey together. I think also having those really honest conversations to say, anyone who's ever gone to college before struggles at some point in time, right? I was a terrible math student. Other students don't write papers well. Other students are juggling work full-time, going to school full-time. Other students have commitments at home or distractions at home. And just to say that anyone who has ever been to college before struggles. I was a student that on paper, both parents went to college, high achieving high school student, should have gone to college and should have graduated. And I did, but it didn't mean, I remember my first semester at UT, like I wanted to go home for a couple of weeks. I was overwhelmed by it all. And to just have someone say that that's okay, I think makes all the difference for a lot of our students. Mentoring in 2022 will look different than mentoring in 2021, which looked significantly different than it did the previous years. If you mentored with us this year, you know that we invested in tnAchieves Connect, which allowed you to meet with your students virtually in a video chat feature, much like what we're doing today. Still call, still text, still email. It also provides you with an additional layer of support. You were able to see when your students submitted their community service hours, when they applied to college, when they enrolled full-time. You got to see that data as soon as we got to see that data. So hopefully you found that to be really beneficial, really, really positive feedback from our mentors using Connect. We've heard that there were challenges getting students in and using Connect, but overall, very positive feedback. What we did here, though, we surveyed our mentors recently, is that 2/3 of our mentors want an in-person option. So if you mentor with us previous to this year, you remember those big crowded meetings in the high schools. We're not going back to those. What we're going to offer you in 2022 is 2 in-person options. First, we're going to host what we call tnAchieves open houses. We're going to utilize the college campuses already working with Chattanooga State. I teased this to Chattanooga State. I presented at their staff and faculty in service, and they're already on the ball here. But what we're going to do is block off a few hours where you can come, sit down with your students. There will be a tnAchieves staff person there to answer your questions. No formal presentation or anything like that, but you'll be able to come, get your questions answered. The colleges, it sounds like, are also going to provide staff there to have some computers where students can apply, where we can check their application status, see what they might be missing, really trying to make this a one-stop shop. And then we're also just going to encourage you to meet with students on your own. Always in public, don't put them in the car, but we know that mentors have been doing this for years. We've never really encouraged it. But Randy Boyd takes his students out for pizza at the beginning of every year. We had a mentor this year who essentially ran her own summer bridge program in her front yard. She put a table out underneath a big shade tree in her front yard. She had a student come over and she essentially tutored her to get her ready for the college placement test. Still, all the while, tried to make sure that we maintain that 1 hour a month time commitment. We need 403 mentors locally in Hamilton County. Hamilton County has hit this goal every single year. But there are certainly some schools that need some additional help. So we would love to have you if you're a new mentor. If you've never mentored before, you can go to the website, tnAchieves.org/mentors. Apply by December 3rd. If you're a returning mentor, you can also go on there and renew your application or just reply to any of the emails we send you. I think that this mentoring program is going to continue to be more important than ever. And we certainly want to make sure that we find the 403 mentors that we need to support students. Other things that you can help us out with is connecting with your community. I've been to the large Chattanooga Rotary. I think Dr. Ashford introduced me. I remember seeing Mr. St. Charles at the Rotary. Would love to come and have those opportunities to present to your civic groups, to your chamber groups. Also, if you're part of an organization that has a large newsletter blast, we can give you content. If you'll shoot us an email at mentors@tnAchieves.org, we can schedule visits. We can give you newsletter content. You can also just send it out to your friends, your family, your friends, your people you go to church with, your coworkers. If you have a group of people that you think would be interested, we'll give you all the content. You can manipulate it, add your own story, but anything that we can do to continue to raise awareness about Tennessee Achieves in your community would be great. Finally, the Tennessee Promise application for students is live. I mentioned earlier that over 90% of students in Tennessee are applying for the scholarship every year. So it's not something that we're typically very concerned about. Our school counselors do an amazing job presenting this opportunity to them, but it never hurts to reach out to that family you know has a senior in high school and make sure that they're keeping this opportunity open and available to them. That is all the presentation that I have for you today. We've got a quick student story here that you can see, as well as my contact information. If you ever have questions, comments, anything I can ever help you out with, please do not hesitate. That's my cell phone number. Keep that with me pretty much at all times. That's all that I have for you today. Again, I'm extremely grateful that you're here. Our organization appreciates you because we've said this for years that our program is really only as successful as the communities that we serve allow us to be. And Chattanooga has been so supportive of the work that we've done in Hamilton County as a whole since we launched there. But if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. I will wait here a minute or two to see if there's anything I can answer for you. If you've got other places to be, we understand. We appreciate you being here, and thanks again for making the time today. Well, I don't see any questions. Guess we covered it all, but if you think of any later, please, again, don't hesitate to reach out, and thanks so much for being here, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.